I feel like a logical consequence of what you just said is that, anybody that has any kind of genetic disorder, or like somebody that is born with bone cancer, that apparently is something that was like a person
that was also purposeful.
Made that purposeful decision. Or I'm assuming that you're not claiming that babies being born with bone cancer is a purposeful decision. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're taking a look at a clip from The Line. If you would like to, please go down below to the description and find a link to The Line and to the live stream that this video clip is coming from. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to The Line. I host over on The Line at least twice a month, so I hope to see you over there. All right, let's get on into the clip. If you're ready to fuck around and find out what this crazy ass caller's talking about today, then please stay tuned. Okay, well, we got Ian calling in for Whiskey Assholes. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good.
I love that that's spreading like a cancer throughout this line. The channel.
Can you guys hear me well?
Yeah, we got you. So you're saying that there is evidence for God, and we're curious as to what evidence convinces you.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate your conversation with the other guy. Like, you guys actually tackled a few points that I've never been able to get formally addressed. So I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you really quickly, Ian, what God are you claiming you have evidence for? Just so I can understand before we get started.
Well, I'm a Christian, but that is a rabbit hole that requires a lot of presuppositions. Okay. And so in order to get to that conclusion, there's a lot of steps beforehand. And based on what I can see from your guys' arguments, you guys are not theists in any regard, correct?
Very true. No.
All right. So one of the things I found most helpful is starting with finding a common ground. You guys are atheists or agnostic?
I would consider myself an agnostic atheist.
Yeah, it's strictly speaking, if you want to get real pedantic about it, Gnosticism is just a state of whether or not you claim to know a thing. Theism and atheism is whether or not you believe in a God. So strictly speaking, we would have to say we are agnostic atheists because we don't believe that there is a God, but we don't claim to have definite knowledge that there is no such thing as a God. For common parlance, you can just use the term atheist. We don't think that there's a God.
Yeah, I find that to be intellectually the honest route. Because to claim that you don't believe in something that you have no evidence for would to say that you have complete and full knowledge of that thing. So
it would also be
in order to say
for us, yeah,
exactly, yeah. So I agree that is a much more intellectually honest position. I hate to bring up what you guys were talking about before because you guys did an amazing job fleshing it out. I did have one question. As you mentioned, Lawrence Krauss and his theory as one possible theory, or is that one that you guys don't subscribe to?
I'm not trained in physics enough to really make a judgment. I read his book, A Universe from Nothing, where he talked about that kind of stuff, and I thought it was neat, but I'm not a physicist. I would never want to be in a club of physicists that would have someone like me as a member.
Yeah, gotcha. I have a surface level understanding of all the different hypotheses for how the inflation came about and what caused it. I'm more partial to a quantum scalar field hypothesis. I don't know what that's formally called. I'm more partial to that than anything else. But I mean, I think that Krauss's hypothesis there is not impossible in any kind of respect. I think that we'll never really truly know, at least with our current level of technology and information.
Yeah. I think when I was reading Krauss's proposal, my biggest pushback was when he explained the two forces that collided and the Big Bang was the collision. And then he said that these two lines intersect. The intersection point is the Big Bang. And then they move infinitely away from each other. And before the Big Bang, they move infinitely away from each other. And just in the most basic sense of the laws of logic is that if something is infinitely separate, then those 2 points never touch. And I've always found that to be a little bit troublesome with his theory.
I guess the issue that I would have with it is like, I don't, so I'm going to be just super duper honest. I read that book a dozen years ago. And so I'm not going to be able to get into specifics, but just building off of what you just said, I would have a difficult time if I was trying to do physics, separating that concept from like Zeno's paradox, to say that like, Zeno famously said, like, if I shoot an arrow at a target, there is a set distance that the arrow is traveling, and it takes a set amount of time. And I can divide either of those values in half. And that is a positive integer. And I can divide that integer in half, and that integer in half, and that integer in half. And I can do that an infinite number of times, and it will always be a positive integer. It will be an infinitesimally small integer, but it will always be positive. And so because there is an infinite number of positive integers in the distance and the time it takes for that arrow to fly, therefore there is no such thing as motion, there is no such thing as time, and nothing can ever possibly take place. But obviously it does, so the universe fucking doesn't work that way. And so that's something that I think about when people try to either do what the last caller was doing, say like, my logic doesn't make sense for the Big Bang, or what before. We're like, okay, well, maybe your fucking logic isn't working then, because Zeno's, that logic's impeccable. You know what I mean? If I can divide this number in half infinite times and always have a positive number, there is therefore an infinite number of positive numbers. Therefore, there is an infinite distance and an infinite time. That's perfect logic. But like, fuck, man, or I guess there's some logician out there who's going to tell me why that's wrong. But like, that makes fucking sense, but it obviously doesn't. And so like if you're talking about that's kind of where I would come from with it. If you're talking about two forces infinitely doing whatever, maybe it's a little bit more interesting than we think.
Well, I just to put this out there, that's why in calculus you calculate an approximation. You don't actually calculate. Yeah, doing it with the limits and everything. Whenever you're doing derivatives and integrals and stuff, you're doing approximations because you calculate the limit as it approaches infinity, and then you approximate it from that point forward.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Yeah, as the theory of infinite, it's kind of a rabbit hole, and I heard you guys say that you only have less than an hour, so I won't touch it in its entirety, but a brief summation is that infinite exists theoretically, but never physically. And as soon as you take something out of the theoretical and put it into the physical, it now has a finite space-time and measurement. And for that reason, a lot of the times scientists use, whenever, for instance, in that example that you gave with the arrow, the reason we can say it's an infinitely small number is because we do not know the limitations of how small things can get. And it's kind of an appeal to a lack of knowledge. So in that regard, I will surrender to the fact that we can't definitively say that there isn't an infinite regress, but I can say the probability that there's an infinite regress is unlikely because things are physical, and physical things have limitations by the nature of them being physical. Therefore, there will reach a point where that arrow can no longer be subdivided because you reach the physical limitations of the thing that you're measuring.
Okay. What's your evidence for God?
So it starts with the problem. I would say you guys would agree that the problem of the perception of design, as far as what Dawkins says, like that there's an illusion of design.
I don't see how that's a problem.
No. I mean, I have an issue with that just because I hate the way he says a lot of things, and that among them.
Very true. Well, I guess, I mean, across the board, like without using words that would be deemed offensive by any party, like, would you say that there definitely is at least a pattern that occurs, like things are trending towards life rather than non-life?
Sometimes. I'm not trying to be pedantic. It's just like, no, for most of the universe, no. For the vast majority of the universe, no. For here on this planet, sometimes.
Okay. So in regards to evolution and natural selection, you don't believe in the aspect of natural selection?
Well, 100% I do. But you need life to already happen for natural selection to happen. And so to say that the universe is trending towards life versus non-life is vastly different than saying the universe tends towards evolution, because evolution is just logic. Evolution is just a logical outcome to what we all can agree is the natural state of genes and heredity and in ecosystems and environments. Like if you know the first thing about sixth grade biology, evolution is just a necessity. But to take it anywhere else in the universe and talk about life that way, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the universe is either hostile to or indifferent to life.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like nature is indifferent in general. I mean, nature just operates. So, like, I don't think that it's, geared towards inorganic life versus or inorganic chemicals versus organic life. I don't think that it cares one way or another. I think that it just operates.
Fair enough. And so I guess I really find like a lot of difficulty with the evolutionary system being in conflict with I'm trying to think of how to word this without using Christian terms.
You can use Christian terms. We hear Christian terms all the time.
Basically, it seems that natural selection is selecting something, and it has a preference. And that preference causes it to go in a direction that has been demonstrated.
Well, I mean, it's the direction is survivability. I mean, I think natural selection, is directed in the way of survivability because that's how organisms propagate and that's how life continues. So, like,
and that's what I meant by life going towards life rather than going towards non.
Right, but like the thing you have to understand, and it's really important. Again, I'm sorry that we have to get hung up on little trivial things like this, but it's really important because especially when we're talking to creationists.
I appreciate it. No, it's good. Yeah.
Well, especially when we're talking about creationists, very, 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 very often people who don't accept evolution don't understand that there's a difference between evolution and abiogenesis. The difference between evolution and the beginning of life. There's a difference between the beginning of life and the Big Bang. There's a difference between any of that and the beginning of the planet and the beginning of the solar system, blah, blah, blah. And so, like, it kind of becomes this boogeyman when I'm talking to Christians 90% of the time. When I'm talking to a Christian, the evolution is just this blanket term for atheism and any natural process in the universe. And so I just help me understand where you're coming from here. Do you accept evolution as the explanation for the diversity of life on this planet?
I would say that I would be forced to say it's a probabilistic. The probability is in favor of evolution. Yeah.
Cool. And you do understand that is not the same thing as the beginning of life, right? That's called abiogenesis. Is a totally different thing. Right.
It's like the difference between someone who making an engine and the difference between explaining combustion. Right now, we're talking about the process of evolution, combustion. Yeah.
Precisely, yes. And so, like, for this now, you're talking about the universe trending towards life. That, to me, is an abiogenesis question. And I can make an argument for that. Because the fact that life got started on this planet so very quickly, the fact that the building blocks of all four major macromolecules of life self-assemble in both laboratory conditions and we find them out in nature all the time, the fact that we're finding them self-polymerizing, the fact that that organic chemistry and biochemistry follow the laws of chemistry and physics at all times and never go against them. Like all of these things tell me that life is a natural process and the emergence of life is a natural process. That is what the evidence is suggesting. But that's different than evolution. And so if you're talking about the universe trending towards life, most of the universe seems not to. The vast majority of the universe has no indication of any even possibility of life. But there's a lot of places that seem like it is possible. And here, at least on this one planet, we know that it's not only possible, we know that it happened really fucking quick. Life on this planet is at the absolute latest 3.8 billion years old, which is within like a few hundred millennia of the end of the Hadean bombardment, the late heavy bombardment in the Hadean period. So almost as soon as this planet was cool enough to sustain life, almost down to the minute life gets started here. And there's a lot of hypotheses as to why that's the case. But at the end of the day,
I think one of them was I even heard about the sun. There's 3 generations of sun, and the sun that we have is the earliest sun model that's capable of producing life. All previous generations were incapable of it.
Something. Why not? But like the what I'm trying to get across here is that, like, from that perspective, I can then say, yeah, the universe trends towards life because life is a natural thing. It's a natural process, and the universe is good at natural processes as it is a natural place. But if you're asking me if life is abundant or typical or whatever, like, of course not. And so it's kind of weird for me to talk about that. And it's especially weird to then bring that into anything to do with evolution, which you were talking about a minute ago when you talked about, like, almost this kind of orthogenesis argument that there seems to have some sort of a goal in mind or a plan in mind, or that natural selection is selecting something, almost seeming like there's some intentionality out of that. That's another completely different thing that I vastly disagree with.
Okay, so the process of evolution, you don't think selects towards, like, life rather than non-life?
So natural selection is the non-random selection of random mutations and changes. And so when we talk about that, yes, it is selecting for reproduction. Natural selection is not the survival of the fittest. It is the reproduction of the okayest. That's how it actually works. So that, yes, that is a non-random trend, but it is a logical result of the nature of life. It is not like it's some, intelligent agent that's literally sifting through everything's DNA and picking and choosing what gets to live.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, it's one of the positions that I try to help my atheist friends understand is that we actually agree on the standpoint that there is something, but our terminology of that something is in disagreement. And then on top of that, Christians add a lot of characteristics to that something, where atheists refine it down to its simplest form, which is that you're talking about that there's this thing out there that is almost like a force, a better word, law, like a law that exists, the law of natural selection or the laws of physics, like, for instance, Hawking talks about the law of gravity.
It's literally just logic. If we can agree that DNA exists and it's heritable, that genes coded in DNA are passed down from parent to offspring, and we can agree that these genes come in different flavors that we call allele. There's no alleles. There's no one single gene for eye color, hair color, height, weight, fat deposition, bone density. Pick your favorite. You know what I mean? There's variation in these genes, and we can agree certainly that different alleles are better suited for life in different environments. If we are basing off of those 3 just obvious truths, if you could have all the best alleles for being a boa constrictor, you're going to die in a coral reef. You have all the best alleles for being a polar bear, you're going to die in the desert, right? And so, or I should say the Sahara Desert, not just any desert. But if we can agree on these fundamental truths of biology, natural selection is the next logical step. Because as ecosystems change, species will necessarily change in their metagenome. The allele frequency of the entire population will necessarily change. So that isn't a law that's like governing. It's just a statement of like necessary fact that comes with the logical implications of what we know about biology. And I say that distinction just to make sure that within this idea that there's any kind of top-down influence here. There is not.
Well, I agree with you, because laws are a description of what's happening, not a thing itself.
Sure.
Like, for instance, like the law of gravity describes like the visible effects of gravity. It is not the thing gravity. Right. We still have not figured out what the thing gravity is.
Well, so Ian, maybe we can get back on track here, because I've loved listening to Forrest talk about evolution, but I'm kind of curious as to how does this factor into your evidence for God? Or maybe it's just been so long that I've forgotten what your evidence for God is.
No, you're good. You guys have given me a lot to think about, because you guys have said things I've never heard other atheists admit to. Like, for instance, the evolutionary process is a non-random process of genomes being selected.
Specifically, natural selection is that.
Yeah, like that's I appreciate you guys being intellectually honest in that, because that's a hard point that I've usually met a lot of opposition.
There's a lot of people who accept evolution who still use creationist straw mans when talking about it and try to talk about it as all random chance all the time, and that's just not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, basically, if I was to just put my, show my cards, I'm trying to get to a position where we can see that there definitely is something going on, to put it into philosophical terms. Somebody's monkeyed with the physics. And I find that is the best foundation of starting point, is like getting to a mutual agreement on that. But
well, Ian, how do you know that?
Because of what we can observe.
What specifically have we observed that would seem to indicate somebody has monkeyed with the physics?
Well, a great point that you made was majority of the universe does not trend towards life. And then we have life in the soonest available possible. Okay.
Well, specifically, we said that it has no, like, nature doesn't have a will. So, like, most of the universe is indifferent about either life or non-life. So, like, that,
most of the universe
indifference is. Sorry, go ahead.
Most of the universe is also empty space, and so like that's what I'm getting. As most of the universe is empty space, devoid of matter, and bombarded with radiation. So, like, life isn't going to be there, right? But also, similarly, most of an atom is empty space. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that, protons are impossible just because they're special and unique and rare, considering the shape or the actual makeup of an atom. So, like, just because life is seemingly rare, not logically rare, but seemingly rare, that doesn't tell me that it's special in any particular way.
Yeah,
well,
and
special and rare are subjective terms. So I don't really know how I could prove that with logic and reasoning.
But I think you know what I was getting at.
Well, but Ian, I think that I think your position logically includes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it logically entails that you're claiming life has a 0% chance of existing without some kind of divine creator. As opposed to, whatever low probability we want to assign to the likelihood of life developing on any particular planet or any particular point in the universe. What I'm saying is that unless it is absolutely zero in this universe, then life is going to develop naturally.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can't say yes or no to that claim because we only have the one universe. So we only have the one example of the testability. Like we can't recreate the Big Bang. And essentially what you just said is what caused the multiverse theory to start in the first place. And I kind of agree with Paul Steingart, a physicist or philosopher that said, oh, go ahead.
No, is that, I don't know, Forrest, did you take that away from what I said? Was
Not
the
really.
Multiverse thing?
No, but
okay,
there's a whole other thing there.
I was just saying that science is about repeatability and testability, right? So you're saying that I'm making a claim that without somebody externally monkeying with the physics that life will never happen. I can't make that claim because we only have one universe in which life did happen. We don't have the ability to test universes where the life didn't happen.
But we do have testable, repeatable evidence that demonstrates that life, or that suggests heavily that life is naturalistic. And so you're the best argument that you have in the face of in the face of all the evidence we have for abiogenesis. The best argument you have is, yeah, of course that's all. It's all happens naturally. That's how the guy made it. And at the end of the day, you're in the same boat as the last caller, where like all you're saying is, here's this gap in my knowledge. Here's this part where this doesn't make any sense. Some guy did that. And everything that we know about science, everything we know about biology, physics, chemistry, abiogenesis, you name it, all of these things are all arranged in such a way because this guy set them up that way. And there's just no other way it could be. And like, you have to demonstrate the guy first. You can't just say there's something I don't understand, therefore the guy made it that way. You have to find, if you want testable, repeatable, observable, all these things, do that for the guy.
Well, real quick, just because I make a claim that I think that the probability that my side has better evidence doesn't mean that I'm saying it's impossible, like it's a all or nothing sum. So that's why, like, I'm saying that I believe that the evidence supports the probability on the side of that there is something monkeying with the physics.
Well,
but
yeah.
at the same time, I can't say that there absolutely is.
Right, but you're saying that without any evidence to suggest it.
That's the issue. There is deistic evolution.
When you say no evidence, what do you mean?
John, do you want to answer that? Because I was going to detail out what you were saying a second ago, but I don't want to interrupt you.
No, well, no, I mean, by no evidence, I mean, like we have massive amounts of evidence for life being able to develop naturally, and like Forrest said, we have experiments that heavily lean in that direction. So unless, I guess, in my view, unless you're saying that there's a absolute 0% likelihood that life could develop, the only other option for you is that God did it. And I'm just saying that we actually don't have any evidence that suggests that. All evidence that we have suggests natural development of life.
Yeah, it's I would agree with what you just said. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask, what evidence do you think you have that suggests that God is responsible for life?
Well, I guess for me, the fact that we do have that evidence shows that that something's being done. And the fact that majority of the evidence points towards a preference, especially when we don't.
I'm sorry. Can you please know that's such a wild claim? Just the last question I have, and then I think we got to move on because I've got 30 minutes left and we got 3 calls left. But can you please explain you're saying that the evidence that we have right now for the origin of life and the evolution of life all points in the direction of some guy doing this. What would the evidence look like?
Not yet.
Just tell me what.
I haven't introduced the guy yet. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, tell me what evidence what would the evidence look like if we had life and we had evolution and we had, all diversity all over the planet? What would that look like that would then indicate to you that some guy was not involved?
You're saying we have the exact reality that we have now, but atheism is true and theism is not.
More or less, it doesn't even have to be the exact reality we have now. It can just be a slightly different version of it. But like what I'm trying to drive at here is like you're saying the evidence that we have for naturalistic evolution, for naturalistic abiogenesis, for naturalistic chemical evolution, for all these things, these natural processes that we're talking about, and you're saying what it sounds like you're saying is that you accept that these are all natural processes, but it sounds to you, based on this evidence, that there's somebody monkeying the whatever. Like somebody is guiding this process. Somebody has set it up in such a way that this can happen naturally. And I'm asking you, what would this natural process need to look like in order for you to say, okay, no, that is just how that is, and there is nobody touching the dials on that? What would that look like?
Well, I guess I would have to agree with Charles Darwin when he proposed the entire point of natural selection. He basically said if we look into the cell and we find more complexity, then his theory is wrong, because it can't get more complex. It has to get simpler in order for the processes to follow what he was proposing. Now, evolutionary science definitely has expanded beyond that. We no longer accept Darwin's failed state, but it's the more we look into it, the more we see very fine-tuned. So
why would you bring it up if you're going to say, I accept this fail state that Darwin said? I know that modern science has moved beyond that and doesn't accept it anymore, though. Why would you bring it up then?
Oh, because I'm just trying to be honest about the history of science.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. So Darwin didn't know jack shit about what was going on inside cells. Darwin didn't know what a nucleotide was. Darwin didn't know how proteins worked or how protein synthesis worked. Darwin didn't know a lot of shit about that. And it actually, as someone who does study this shit, it makes more sense that this is very complex on these lower levels than if it wasn't.
Well, I guess the reason I brought it up was because the more we look into things, the more the randomness goes away and purpose keeps showing up. in everything that's selected. Almost as
I'm sorry, I told you earlier on that this is non-random at all levels.
Right, and I feel like a natural. Sorry, Forrest.
No, you're fine. I've been talking a lot.
I feel like a logical consequence, and we do need to move on, but I feel like a logical consequence of what you just said is that, anybody that has any kind of genetic disorder, or like somebody that is born with bone cancer, that apparently is something that was a person
that was also purposeful.
Made that purposeful decision. Or I'm assuming that you're not claiming that babies being born with bone cancer is a purposeful decision.
Or did God make a mistake there?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that everything ends up 100% in as perfect. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any sickness or disease or anything ever. But I'm saying is that.
No, I'm not saying that. What the claim that you made was that, as we look into these things, everything looks purposeful. Did you not? Or am I misremembering what you said? Or am I misunderstanding?
Oh, that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then that makes bone cancer in children purposeful. And I don't see a purpose for bone cancer in children or any other genetic or cancer.
Yeah, I don't
disease.
mean everything as in 100% of everything. I guess I'm just using, maybe that was a bad use of words. I mean majority.
What's one thing that God doesn't have control over?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if in your view, God is the one making these decisions.
Are you talking about sovereignty? Like if there's anything that God can't control, then therefore he's not God?
No, that wasn't all. I mean, part. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, you said that you're saying a majority of things are made or done purposefully, but apparently God doesn't do some things purposefully. So, I mean, to me, you kind of find yourself in a contradiction. Either God purposefully plans things out, and as far as a Christian God goes, he's omniscient, so he knows everything that will happen, that has happened, and is presently happening. If he can't control all of that, then he's not all powerful or omnipotent. So, I mean, you basically have to choose here which omniproperty you want to assign to a God. I mean, maybe you don't assign the omniproperties God. I don't know. But what I do know is that we need to move on to another theist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I thank you so much for giving me something to think about. So, yeah.
Yeah, call us back. I would love to keep talking to you.
Yep.
Absolutely. God bless. You guys have a good day.
All right. See you, Ian.
Satan bless you as well.
Well, heathens, that's going to be it for today's clip from the line. Again, if you would like to subscribe to the line, their links are in the description. So please go down there and subscribe. And as a reminder, I do host over there at least twice a month on either a Sunday or a Monday. So if you want to see more of me answering questions from callers, please go over to the line and subscribe. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.